him in the streets of Philadelphia. You'd have been astonished what those two fine old chiefs knew of the ins and outs of such matters. The little I've learned of politics I picked up from Cornplanter and Red Jacket on the reservation. Toby used to read the Aurora newspaper. He was what they call a Democrat, though our church is against the brethren considering themselves with politics. I hate politics too, said Una, and Pharaoh laughed. I might have guessed it, he said. There's something that isn't politics. One hot evening, late in August, Toby was reading the newspaper on the stoop, and Red Jacket was smoking under a peach tree, and I was fiddling. Of a sudden, Toby drops his Aurora. I'm an oldish man, too fond of my own comforts, he says. I will go to the church, which is in Philadelphia. My brother, lend me a spare pony. I must be there tonight. Good, says Red Jacket, looking at the sun. My brother shall be there. I will ride with him and bring back the ponies. I went to pack the saddlebags. Toby had cured me of asking questions. He stopped my fiddling if I did. Besides, Indians don't ask questions much, and I wanted to be like them. When the horses were ready, I jumped up. Get off, says Toby. Stay and mind the cottage till I come back. The Lord has laid this on me, not you. I wish he hadn't. He powders off down the Lancaster road, and I sat on the doorstep wondering after him. When I picked up the paper to wrap his fiddle strings in, I spelled out a piece about the yellow fever being in Philadelphia. So dreadful, everyone was running away. I was scared, for I was fond of Toby. We never said much to each other, but we fiddled together, and music's as good as talking to them that understand. Did Toby die of yellow fever? Una asked. Not him. There's justice left in the world still. He went down to the city and bled him well again in heaps. He sent back word by Red Jacket that if there was a war he died, I was to bring the oils along to the city. But till then I was to go on working in the garden, and Red Jacket was to see me to it. Down at heart all Indians reckon digging's a squaw's business, and neither him nor Cornplanter, when he relieved to watch, was a hard taskmaster. We hired a nigger boy to do our work, and a lazy, grinning runagate he was. When I found Toby didn't die the minute he reached town, why, boy-like, I took him off my mind and went with my Indians again. Oh, those days up in north at Castanego, running races and gambling with the Senecas, or bee hunting in the woods, or fishing in the lake. Pharaoh sighed and looked after across the water. But it's best, he went on suddenly, after the first frosts. You roll out of your blanket and find every leaf left green overnight turned red and yellow. Not by trees at that time, but hundreds and hundreds of miles of 'em, like sunsets splattered upside down. On one of such days the maples was flaming scarlet and gold, and the sumach bushes were redder. Cornplanter and Red Jacket came out in full war dress, making the very leaves look silly. Feathered war bonnets, yellow doeskin leggings, fringed and tasseled, red horse blankets, and their bridles feathered and shelled and beaded no bounds. I thought it was war against the British till I saw their faces weren't painted, and they only carried wrist whips. I then hummed Yankee Doodle at 'em. They told me they was going to visit Big Hand and find out for sure whether he meant to join the French in fighting the English, or to make a peace treaty with England. I reckon those two would have gone out on their warpath at a nod from Big Hand, but they knew well if there was a war twixt England and the United States, their tribe would catch it from both parties, same as all the other wars. They asked me to come along and hold the ponies. That puzzled me, because they always put their ponies up at the Buck, or Epley's, when they went to General Washington in the city, and horse holding is a nigger's job. Besides, I wasn't exactly dressed for it. Do you mean you were dressed like an Indian? Dan demanded. Pharaoh looked a little abashed. This didn't happen at Lebanon, he said, but a bit farther north on the reservation. And at that particular moment in time, so far as blanket, hairband, moccasins, and sunburn went, there wasn't much odds twixt me and a young Seneca buck. You may laugh, he smoothed down his long-skirted brown coat, but I told you I took to their ways all over. I said nothing, though I was bursting to let out the war whoop like young men had taught me. No, And you don't let one out here either, said Puck before Dan could ask. Go on, Brother Square-Toes. We went on. Pharaoh's narrow dark eyes gleamed and danced. We went on, 40, 50 miles in a day, for days on end, we three braves. And how a great tall Indian a horseback can carry his war bonnet at a center through thick timber without brushing a feather beats me. My silly head was banged often enough by low branches, but they slipped through like running elk. We had evening hymn singing every night after they'd blown their pipe smoke to the quarters of heaven. Where did we go? I'll tell you, but don't blame me if you're no wiser. We took the old war trail from the end of the lake along the East Susquehanna through the Nantago country, right down to Fort Shamokin on the Cinconays River. We crossed the Juanita by Fort Granville, got into Shippensburg over the hills of the Oshwick Trail, and then to Williams Ferry. It's a bad one. From Williams Ferry across the Shandor, over the Blue Mountains, through Ashby's Gap, and so southeast by south, from there till we found the president at the back of his own plantations. I'd hate to be trailed by Indians in earnest. They caught him like a partridge on a stump. After we'd left our ponies, we scouted forward through a woody piece, and creeping slower and slower, at last if my moccasins even slipped red-jacketed turn and frown. I heard voices, Monsieur Genet's for choice, long before I saw anything, and we pulled up at the edge of a clearing where some niggers in a gray and red liveries were holding horses and half a dozen gentlemen, but one was Genet. We were talking among felled timber. I fancied they'd come to see Genet on a piece of his road, for his portmantle was with him. I hid in between two logs, as near the company as I be to that old windlass there. I didn't need anybody to show me Big Hand. He stood up, very still, his legs a little apart, listening to Genet, that French ambassador, which never had more manners than a Beauchamp tinker. Genet was as good as ordering him to declare war on England at once. I had heard that clack before on the embuscade. He'd said he'd stir up the whole United States to have war with England, whether Big Hand liked it or not. Big Hand heard him out of the last end. I looked behind me. My two chiefs had vanished like smoke. Says Big Hand, "That's very forcibly put, Monsieur Genet." "Citizen, citizen," the fellow spits in. "I at least am a Republican." "Citizen Genet," he says, "you may be sure it will receive my fullest consideration." This seemed to take Citizen Genet back a piece. He rode off grumbling and never gave his nigger a penny. No gentleman. The others all assembled around Big Hand then, and in their way, they said pretty much what Genet had said. They put it to him, here was France and England at war, in a manner of speaking, right across the United States stomach, and paying no regards to anyone. The French was searching American ships on pretense they was helping England, but really for to steal the goods. The English was doing the same, only the other way around, and besides searching, they was pressing American citizens into their navy to help them fight France, on pretense that those Americans was lawful British subjects. His gentlemen put this very clear to Big Hand. It didn't look to them, they said, as though the United States should try to keep out of the fight was any advantage to her, because she only catched it from both French and English. They said that 9 out of 10 good Americans was crazy to fight the English, then and there. They wouldn't say whether that was right or wrong. They only wanted Big Hand to turn it over in his mind. He did, for a while. I saw a red jacket and corn planter watching him from the far side of the clearing, and how they had slipped round there was another mystery. Then Big Hand drew himself up and let his gentleman have it. "Hit him?" asked Dan. "No, nor yet was it what you might call swearing. He blasted him with his natural speak. He asked them half a dozen times over whether the United States had enough armed ships for any shape or sort of war with anyone. He asked them if they thought she had those ships, to give him those ships, and they looked on ground as if they expected to find him there. He put it to 'em whether, setting ships aside, their country, I reckon he gave 'em good reasons, whether the United States was ready or able to face a new big war, she having but so few years back, wound up one against England.